everybody. I hope that you are doing good and also hope that you are having a good day so far. Today we'll be doing our grade 8 English lesson on pronouns. And yes, we did pronouns in our previous lessons, and we're still going to be doing pronouns for some time because there is quite a few things that we need to, for example, do under our chapter of pronouns. So we're doing pronouns, which is a continuation of the previous lesson. Our subject is English language arts. All right. So we said that our chapter is our we are doing grade 8 English language arts, grade 8, and the subject that we are focusing on is English language arts. And then we're going to scroll down up until we get to our chapter of pronouns. All right. So our chapter is pronouns. Our subject is English language arts. We doing grade 8. And the lessons that we are going to be focusing on under the chapter of pronouns is to use reflexive pronouns and to use relative pronouns, which is who and whom. All right. So that is going to be the lessons for today. So when it comes to pronouns, and like I said, this is a continuation of our chapter on pronouns. See it more as a whole series that we are doing on pronouns, right? With different lessons underneath, right? Hi. So that is why we did pronouns now twice, I think, for 2 lessons, and now we're doing pronouns again, and we're still going to be doing for, I think, 2 more lessons or 2 more sessions. All right, so when it comes to pronouns, right, we firstly a pronoun takes the place of a noun, right? And with our pronouns, we have reflexive pronouns, and in this case, we also have relative pronouns, right? And reflexive pronouns, it's pronouns that end in self or it ends in selves. So that is reflexive pronouns. They are pronouns that either end in self, referring to one person, like one person or thing, or selves, referring to more than one person or thing. And when we look at our subject as well as our reflexive pronoun, our subject as well as the reflexive pronouns, they need to be in agreement with one another, right? So it needs to refer to one another. For example, let me do this just to make it a bit easier. So when it comes to reflexive pronouns, right, we have our subject, right, which is singular subject, and we have plural subjects. And both singular subject as well as plural subject, it needs to refer with, it needs to refer back to its reflexive pronoun, right? Like in this case, we say we have a singular subject which refers to I being a singular subject, right? So within a sentence, when we write a sentence, then that I needs to refer back to, or myself needs to refer back to I. So I is our singular subject, and then we have myself. It needs to be referred to myself too. For example, I myself is quite content with something, right? So you are referring to one and the other thing. So your subject and your reflexive pronoun, right? It should agree with one another. Your this reflexive pronoun needs to agree with your subject. Myself refers to I. That is why I was just making a random example by saying I myself, right? Or I did it myself. That shows that, it's referring back to the subject. You can do something by yourself. So which means that yourself refers back to our singular subject, which is you. That is how a reflexive pronoun, or how we use a reflexive pronoun. We have our singular subjects, right, which ends in self, and our reflexive pronoun, or we have our singular subjects, and then we have our reflexive pronouns that basically ends in self, which refers to singular, right? And these reflexive pronouns needs to refer back to our subject. All right. Another one says she is our subject, our singular subject, and the reflexive pronoun that needs to refer back to she is herself. She helped herself with homework, or she did it herself. The same with he. He is our singular subject, and our reflexive pronoun himself needs to refer back to our singular subject, which is he. All right. Then we also have it as a singular subject, it referring to a thing or an animal or so on. And here we have a reflexive pronoun where our reflexive pronoun needs to refer back to our subject, which is it. All right. So that is basically our singular subjects, right? And our reflexive pronouns. And like we said, these reflexive pronouns, it needs to refer back to our subjects, and these are our subjects. This is just the subjects which is more singular, and it ends with singular, right? And these are reflexive pronouns, right? Which refers back to our singular subject, and that is why the reflexive pronouns, it ends with self. Now we have the plural subjects, right? And the plural subjects or the plural subject, it also we need to do the same, where the reflexive pronoun that ends in selves needs to refer back to our plural subject. And we're going to look at that now. So our plural subjects are words like we, right? It's like saying we helped ourselves to some more soup, which means that ourselves, it refers back to our plural subject, which is we, right? You, you can either be, as a singular, refers to one person or thing, or it can be referring to more than one person. Because yourself refers back to you, right? And then they did it themselves referring back to they. And here with the plural subjects, our reflexive pronouns, it ends with selves. Plural, singular subjects, right? And singular reflexive pronouns, it ends in self, whereas the plural subject with the reflexive pronoun ends in selves. And like we said, that the reflexive pronouns, it needs to basically refer back to the subject of the sentence in which it appears. Myself, it refers back to I. Yourself to you. Herself to she. Himself to he. Itself to it. Ourselves to we. Yourselves to you. Themselves to they. They are referring back to the subject of the sentence in which it appears. And it needs to agree, the reflexive pronoun needs to agree with either the plural subject or the singular subject. All right. So that is basically reflexive pronouns, right? If we also continue on reflexive pronouns, reflexive pronouns, it is used to refer back to the subject of the sentence, which I said earlier on, or the clause in which it appears, and it should agree with the subjects as I mentioned earlier. our reflexive pronoun, which is either in the word that ends with self or selves, it needs to refer back to either our singular subject or our plural subject, right? All right. And remember, we said that the reflexive pronoun refers back to the subject of the sentence in which it appears, right? And it should always agree with the subject. And if we look at a few examples, it says we help ourselves to some more noodles. So we helped ourselves to some more noodles. And as you can see, we is our singular, is our plural subject. And a reflexive pronoun, ourselves, it refers back to we. We helped ourselves to some more soup. Ourselves refers back to our subject, which is we, right? So which means that our subject is we. So we use the reflexive pronoun ourselves. After the guests left, Amy made herself a cup of tea. So after the guests left, Amy made herself a cup of tea. And if you can look over here, right? Amy, they're giving us the noun, right? They're giving us the noun and they are telling us the reflexive pronoun herself. But in this case, right, if you see we have Amy, then all you do is we just change Amy to a pronoun, right? Which means that we will say after guest left, she made herself a cup of tea, which means that herself still refers back to the singular um subject of that basically that links with the reflexive pronoun herself. So we need to keep in mind that our reflexive pronoun, whether it is singular or plural, needs to refer back to our singular or back to our plural subject. It needs to agree with the subject. The reflexive pronoun needs to agree with the subject. And you should not be confused between a reflexive pronoun as well as a personal pronoun. There's a difference between a reflexive pronoun and a personal pronoun. A reflexive pronoun, right? It can only be used to refer to the subject. The reflexive pronoun, it can only be used to refer to the subject, right? Or the clause in which, whatever we are talking about, that it appears. And to refer to someone else or something else, we may use a personal pronoun. If you are referring to someone else or something else, then now it becomes a personal pronoun. And personal pronouns are words like me, you, him, her, it, us, or them should then be used instead. That is if you're referring to somebody else, not referring back to your subject. For example, it says, Jake wrote a note to himself, right? If we say Jake wrote a note to himself, then if we, for example, change Jake into a pronoun, then we can say it is he, right? So he wrote a note to himself. This is basically still a reflexive pronoun because the reflexive pronoun himself refers back to the subject, which is Jake. If we, for example, change that to a pronoun, and then it is he. So that is still a sentence that refers to a reflexive pronoun. But now, if you look at this sentence, it says Jake wrote a note for him. You see, this one is not referring back to Jake, right? This is not referring to someone else because for him, it means that he is writing a letter to someone else. All right. So once again, before we go on to our test, actually before we go to A plus students.ca and then our test, we said that when it comes to reflexive pronouns, right, our reflexive pronoun, it needs to basically refer back to our subject, right, in which it appears, or it needs to refer back to a clause in which it appears, and it should agree with the subject. So our reflexive pronoun needs to agree with our subject. And if it refers to something else or someone else, then that is not a reflexive pronoun. It is now a personal pronoun. Because the reflexive pronoun, it does without a doubt refer back to the subject, whether it is a singular subject or the plural subject. All right, so now we're going to our test where we are going to use reflexive pronouns. Oh, that's relative pronouns. All right. So now we're going to use reflexive pronouns. It says your uncle make a fool of. So your uncle make a fool of, do we say of him or do we say of himself? Every time he gets on the dance floor. Which one is correct? Should we say that your uncle makes a fool of him or makes a fool of himself every time he gets on the dance floor? All right. And we said that our reflexive pronoun, it needs to refer back to our noun or our subject. So now we need to say your uncle makes a fool of him, or do we say he makes a fool of himself every time he gets on the dance floor? Which one is correct? Him or himself? All right. So if we were to choose the correct option, we will say that your uncle makes a fool of himself. Because remember, we said that our reflexive pronoun needs to refer back to our subject. So your uncle is a him, right? Or he. The subject is he, so we would say that he makes a fool of himself every time he gets on the dance floor. All right. So we need to keep in mind that our reflexive pronoun it is to refer back to the subject, whether it is a singular subject or a plural subject. It needs to refer back to our subject. If it refers to anybody else or anything else, then it becomes now a personal pronoun. All right. So now we're going to our test where we are going to use the reflexive pronouns. It says we need to complete the sentence with a pronoun that refers back to, yes, well done, himself is correct. You mean will we do the test before we go on to the next lesson? It says we need to complete the sentence with a pronoun that refers back to the subject. It says, I wish Aunt Anna would stop worrying. Should we say stop worrying she about factors that are beyond her control, or stop worrying herself about factors that are beyond her control? Which word is correct? Do we say she Aunt Anna should stop worrying she or worrying herself? Option one or option two? Which one is correct? The reflexive pronoun that refers back to our subject. All right. And if we were to choose the correct option, then yes, we will choose option two, where our reflexive pronoun, which is herself, it refers back to Aunt Anna. So well done. I wish Aunt Anna would stop worrying herself about factors that are beyond her control. So well done. Option two is correct. All right. You must all strap you in now, or you must all strap yourselves in now, the commander announced. It is time to head to the International Space Station. We need to complete the sentence with a pronoun that refers back to our subject. Is it you that refers back to the subject, or yourselves, option 2, that refers back to our subject. All right. And if we were to choose the correct pronoun, right, reflexive pronoun that refers back to our subject, then yes, we will say option 2, yourselves refers back to our subject. So we will say, you must all strap yourselves in now. The command announced, it's time to head to the International Space Station. So well done. Yourselves refers back to our subject. Yes, well done. Your uncle makes a fool of he, option 1, or makes a fool of himself, option 2, every time he gets on the dance floor. So your uncle makes a fool of he or himself every time he gets on the dance floor. We need to choose the correct pronoun. And if we were to select the correct option, remember once again, our pronoun, reflexive pronoun, needs to refer back to our subject, whether it is a singular subject or a plural subject. So now it says, your uncle makes a fool of, yes, himself, option 2, every time he gets on the dance floor. So he makes a fool of himself. Himself refers back to, it's not like saying he. Your uncle refers to he, right? So well done. Himself is correct. The next one says, a mascot protects, is it mascot? Protects, do we say itself from predators by hiding in a lodge, or it protects its from predators by hiding in a lodge? Option 1 or option 2, which one is correct? All right. So we now said that a mascot protects, do we say itself from predators from hiding in a lodge, or its? And if we were to choose the correct option, then we will say that it protects itself from predators. Remember, our reflexive pronoun refers back to our subject. Our reflexive pronouns, it either ends in self or it ends in selves, depending if it is a singular subject or if it is a plural subject. All right. The next one says, when you perform this experiment, you must be careful not to burn with the acid. Burn you with the acid or burn yourself with the acid. Which one is correct? All right. And if we were to choose the correct option, we will say, when you perform this experiment, you must be careful not to burn yourself. Yes, option two, yourself with the acid. Because remember, our pronoun needs to refer back to our subject, right? So our pronoun are either ending in self or selves. So it refers back to the pronoun. So well done. Option two is correct. All right, let's do the last one. This is the last one. Now that we've finished shoveling the driveway, should we reward we with hot chocolate or should we reward ourselves with hot chocolate? All right. And if we were to choose the correct one, we would say, now that we've finished shoveling the driveway, should we reward we, option one, or ourselves, option two, with hot chocolate? We need to choose the correct option, option one or option two, in order to complete the sentence. Our reflexive pronoun needs to refer to our subjects. All right, and this is the last one where we say that now that we've finished shoveling the driveway, Should we reward ourselves with hot chocolate? Yes, well done. Option 2 is correct. All right. So for now, this is the end of our lesson on pronouns. We focus mainly on using reflexive pronouns. We said reflexive pronouns, it ends in self and selves, right? With our reflexive pronouns, right, we also have singular subjects as well as plural subjects. Our reflexive pronouns needs to refer back to our subject within a sentence. If it does not refer back to the subject in which we are talking about, and it maybe refers to something else or someone else, then it is not a reflexive pronoun, right? So all reflexive pronouns needs to refer back to the subject in which we are talking about. All right, so this is the end of our lesson. Thank you very much, cadets, for joining the class, and I really hope you're going to have a good evening further. So, till next time, you must have a good evening further. Goodbye.